All right, so tonight, everyone, we are talking about imposter syndrome. Basically, when it comes to imposter syndrome, what that means is the belief that success is accidental, temporary, or undeserved. And typically, it shows up during growth periods, I would say. So it's not a matter of failure, but it usually happens when you are in an uncomfortable situation or spot in when it comes to your career or your profession. And I will say, when it comes to growth and being in new places and spaces, it's not a matter that the discomfort equals incompetence. I would almost argue, on the other hand, that because people who suffer from imposter syndrome, they over prepare. So they're more than competent enough for the job. It's just that inner thought or that inner monologue that they may have that tells them that they may not be the right person for the job or that they may not have the right skill set for a particular job. But I will say too, again, going back to that space of growth, typically when you're entering new rooms or new places or new experiences, it often triggers old narratives because you're in these new spaces and you never have encountered them before. You don't know necessarily how to navigate those things. And so you rely back on old fixtures, old thought processes. And sometimes that can be okay. Other times, most of the time, I would say, it's not, because again, it doesn't, those old rules do not apply to the new situations that you're faced in. So I will say imposter syndrome isn't insecurity, but it's more so a matter of just over functioning. You're really trying to maintain control. You're trying to overanalyze, over prepare. But it is something that is just so common. I mean, when I talk to people younger than me, my age, and even people older than me, it's very common to have experienced imposter syndrome sometime within your career, or just in life in general. But let's talk about some common signs of imposter syndrome. Again, over preparing and over editing so you can feel safe or palatable, that is a common sign of imposter syndrome. When you're double checking your work, when you know that you're qualified to do the job, you have the experience, you have the know how, the education, whatever the case may be. And typically, you're also very, like, you humble yourself, you minimize your experience, and you downplay your results. Typically, you may say one of these key phrases, oh, I just fell into this job, or oh, I'm not really an expert in this. And that is you humbling yourself. And I will say this also plays a role depending on how you grew up, your childhood. Maybe, I know there's a lot of people when they were brought up, maybe if they were exceptionally skilled, their parents or even their siblings or people at school would humble them to make sure they didn't get a big head about themselves. But as we are, as you get older and you come into your own, you should embrace the skills that you naturally have, and you shouldn't feel bad about them. Now, I'm not saying go around with your chest all puffed out all the time, but being realistic and knowing that you know what you know. All right. And then probably the biggest thing when it comes to imposter syndrome, one of the common signs is that you're comparing your behind the scenes to someone else's highlight reel. And what that means is that you are seeing, especially social media makes it so easy to do when you're looking at someone's social media or what they're painting on the outside for other people, you're not seeing the messy behind the scenes. Behind the scenes, the growth, preparing, just becoming yourself, and then also figuring out what to show to other people. That is a whole messy process. So you don't know what goes on behind the scenes for other people. So I would say the only person you can compare yourself to, the only person you're in competition with is yourself. So it's so important to keep that in mind and keep that in focus. So that way, when you're trying to really measure your growth or progress, compare your today self to maybe your last week self, your last month self, your last year self, and see how far you progressed. Because looking at other people's highlight reels and what they're portraying or allowing you to see, it's not the same, and you're always going to be disappointed and feel like you're behind. So now I want to take a little different spin when it comes to imposter syndrome and talk about how it shows up in different areas of your life. So I'm going to talk about how imposter syndrome shows up as a nonprofit professional, but then also how it shows up as an entrepreneur or a creator. All right, so let's talk about the nonprofit professional first. So typically what imposter syndrome looks like for this person, they are overextending themselves in the name of service. Nonprofits, nonprofit work is just a very altruistic, very feel-good sector to work in. They typically are carrying too much because people are counting on them, and so they're delaying rest and boundaries. And it's that old saying where you can't take care of anyone else unless you take care of yourself first. Put on your own oxygen mask before you try and help others with theirs. And so with the nonprofit world, those boundaries, when it comes to serving the community, but then also serving yourself, it becomes so blurred. And I would say out of all the different sectors there are, the nonprofit professionals in the nonprofit realm, they burn out far quicker than anyone else in any other sector, I would say, because that line is so blurred. And plus, it's just the fact that you're giving of yourself to help other people, that you always get bleeding hearts, as I would say, in the nonprofit industry. But it is so important to be able to take care of yourself and to not overextend yourself in the name of your nonprofit's mission. Another way this shows up is hesitating to claim expertise in funder or boardrooms. So typically this person is the one who is doing the job. They are the subject matter expert. But for whatever reason, they're super humble. They're gonna sit there quiet in the room, listening, absorbing, trying not to take up space. And I would say this last one here, treating leadership as sacrifice instead of sustainability. This I've seen in a lot of nonprofits where basically the leader or leaders of an organization, where they will treat their work as, they're sacrificing themselves because of the good of the mission, the good of the organization. But those bad habits, they trickle down in the organization to their managers, to the program management staff, volunteers. It really permeates throughout the whole entire organization. And you don't want those bad habits to do that in an organization, because it sets yourself up for like a bad culture, work-life balance. Again, in nonprofit industries already, you have leading cases of burnout with employees. So you want to be able to, as a leader, treat your leadership and how you manage people in a way of sustainability. So showing them the right ways to take care of themselves, making sure that you're taking care of your other employees by making sure that they're not burning themselves out. So you don't want to basically spread bad habits throughout an organization. You want to make sure that you are approaching it as that, okay, in order for us to carry out our mission, we have to be well as an organization, but as individuals as well. And so making sure that you are basically walking the talk. All right. So that's nonprofit leadership. Let's move into entrepreneurs and creators. There's going to be a lot of finger pointing. It's going to seem like a lot of call outs, but it's also going to be call-ins for me as well. But let's start with this: staying in preparation mode instead of execution mode. For entrepreneurs and creators, there are some of us who will go take all the courses instead of going forward and doing what we know we need to be doing. We will take the courses, we'll take the different certifications. We stay in preparation mode, but we never seem to execute. We just stay in that motion of just soaking up all the knowledge because we're hesitating, because of nerves, because we feel like we're not there yet. There's no amount, you will never get to 100% of knowing everything there is about a specific topic. You have to just go with it, and you learn what you don't know in the process of making or doing the thing you're trying to avoid doing. All right. Another way that imposter syndrome shows up for entrepreneurs and creators is underpricing or over delivering for validation. So underpricing yourself or over delivering for validation. And there are so many creatives that I work with, other entrepreneurs that I work with. They do not price themselves the way they should be priced. They are underpricing themselves, undercutting themselves, but yet they are delivering products and services where the client should have been charged like triple the amount because of the product that they're getting or the service that they're getting. And that is all because of the entrepreneur or the creative thinking that they're just not worth that elevated price. They really do have this thing in their head where like, well, I just don't feel comfortable charging that price. And, I'd rather just stay here. But instead of also, if you're going to charge that low price point, provide the equitable service at that price point as well. But normally it's low price point and they just over deliver. So that is definitely one of the things to watch out for. And that is one of the things how imposter syndrome kind of needles its way in when it comes to entrepreneurs and creators. Another thing is hesitating to post, pitch, or be visible. That is me. That is why it took me 3 years to do a YouTube channel finally. But it's a matter, again, what I would mention before. There's no amount of preparation that's going to set you forward to just do the thing. You have to just go off and do it, and you learn in the process. And then also confusing visibility, anxiety with lack of skill. There are some people who are just really shy by putting themselves out there, but it's not about a lack of skill. So just also keeping that in mind, that it's just being comfortable putting yourself out there, what to put out there. But it is, again, not a lack of skill. All right, so now let's talk about how to combat imposter syndrome. One of the biggest things is to name it when it shows up. So for instance, when you are in a new space or you're in a new environment and immediately in your head, you're like, I'm not ready for this. Change that into this is unfamiliar, because that's all it is. It's just very unfamiliar to you, and it has to be something that you get used to, and that's okay. But then you're shifting what that is, your feelings, to evidence. And so your feelings, I feel like feelings don't accurately portray a situation. And so when you look towards moving to evidence as far as, okay, what are the things that I can see, sense, touch? These are the real things that I can put my faith in. And so that way, when it comes to these new environments, it's just at that point, you're just shaping yourself into that new environment. You're trying to figure out how to interact in that environment. It's not about what you think you're feeling, because it could be false. I know there's the spotlight effect where people always think, you walk into a room and you think all eyes are on you, and no one has even noticed that you walked in. So that's what I mean about shifting your feelings to evidence. Focus on the things that you can see, the things that are appearing to you, and then just act accordingly from there. If you are one who doesn't believe in their skill set or their expertise, track your results, track your impact, and also track the trust that others have placed in you. When people tell you that you've done a good job, believe them, because they're not just going to blow smoke, just to soothe you or anything like that. It's just, there are times when you can actually see for yourself that you've made an impact. So track those things, save those things, and then that way, if you ever feel down or maybe imposter syndrome is creeping back up on you, you can go back and reflect on those things. I would also say act first, let your feelings catch up later. I think this is, the fake it till you make it, basically. You play the role until your feelings catch up and you really feel that you are in that role. And I would also say, too, just really trust yourself, because at the end of the day what your skill set is, what you've been through, the knowledge base that you have, and you just have to rise to the occasion. That's all it is. And I will leave this video at this. Just remember that leadership, it doesn't require self-erasure. And so that means that you still want to be your authentic self, but also trust yourself. Again, you know what you know what you don't know as well. And so really taking on that new role that you're growing into and just feeling it out and making it your own. You don't have to look like, if you are creative, you don't have to look like another creator in your same space. Make it fit you, make it fit what you're all about. So I will say the truth when it comes to imposter syndrome is that it really doesn't disappear. It just changes voices over time as you go through your career, as you go through your business. So being that it doesn't actually go away, the goal isn't elimination. It's just awareness, being aware of when it's just you maybe being overwhelmed or being nervous because it's an unfamiliar place that you're in when it comes to your business or your nonprofit. Understanding that. And I will say this, real imposters, if you have because we've all seen them, We've all seen people who are within our jobs, within our creative spheres, who are just smoke and mirrors. And those people do not self reflect. So that's the biggest takeaway I want to say. So if you ever question yourself, like, am I an imposter? No, right there, you're not. Because if you were truly an imposter, you would not be questioning yourself. Caring deeply is evidence of integrity, not fraud. So the fact that you're questioning yourself, that you're thinking about these things, right there, cross that off and just realize what is happening in the space that you're currently in when it comes to your job, your nonprofit work, your career, etc. Because again, discomfort does not mean failure. It just often means expansion. Again, you're becoming a newer person, you're acquiring new skills, you're meeting new people, you're doing new things. And with newness comes a little bit of fear because it's something you haven't seen before. And it's okay, you just grow into that role. All right? So that is all I have for you tonight. Tonight's affirmation, I would say, you are worthy of being seen. All right. So again, my name is Monie. Thank you for spending some time with me this evening, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.